What if the man who saved you from a crushing debt looked you in the eyes and said, "I want you, not the deal"? A cold billionaire, a contract that changed everything, and a night in the hospital that melted every wall around his heart. You won't believe how this story ends. If this story hit your heart like it did mine, drop a comment below and tell me what moment surprised you the most. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next life-changing story. And share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. Let's spread this warmth together. Rain hammered down on the sidewalks of Manhattan like fists against steel, turning the late-night streets into glistening rivers. Hailey Brooks shoved through the heavy door of a dimly lit bar on 3rd Avenue, rainwater streaming from her hair and soaking through her thin coat. She didn't care. Her hands were shaking as she slid onto a stool, pulling a stack of crumpled bills from her pocket and flattening them on a cocktail napkin. The bartender barely glanced up. Hailey's lips moved as she counted, whispering numbers under her breath, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. $600,000. That's what her father's debts had become. Her prison sentence. She waved a hand at the bartender. "Whiskey, double." Her voice cracked, but the glass hit the counter a second later. She gulped it down fast, the burn clawing her throat. She scribbled on the napkin with the end of a ballpoint pen, her numbers smearing under the wetness of her fingers. Her laugh came out jagged, broken. 600 grand, she muttered to herself, loud enough to draw a few side glances. Might as well put a target on my back. At the far end of the bar, a man in a black tailored suit watched her over the rim of an untouched glass. Ethan Carter sat like stone, perfectly composed, every movement calculated. But his eyes, sharp, glacial blue, never left her. He didn't drink, he didn't fidget, he simply observed, a predator among the restless, late-night crowd. Hailey kept counting, her fingers trembling. What do I sell first, my car, my soul? She snorted, a dark laugh that made the man 3 stools down look away. She grabbed her second whiskey, drained it in one long swallow, then slammed the glass down. The scrape of polished shoes on the floor made her glance up. The man in the suit was walking toward her with deliberate steps. He didn't ask permission. He stopped at her side, his shadow cutting across the napkin full of debts. Without a word, he reached into his jacket, pulled out a heavy business card, and set it on the bar with a crisp snap. "How much?" His voice was low, steady, a cold blade cutting through the bar's dull hum. Hailey blinked, confused, then smirked, a bitter edge in her tone. "Enough to get me killed." Her laugh was sharp this time, daring him to flinch. He didn't. He leaned in, eyes locked on hers, his words precise. "I'll pay." Her heartbeat stuttered. "Excuse me?" "I'll pay your debt," he said, each syllable deliberate, like he was signing a contract in the air. Then he added, without pause, without a shred of hesitation, "But you'll give me a child." The glass in Hailey's hand slipped. It hit the floor and shattered with a crack that silenced the nearby chatter. Whiskey spread across the tile, mixing with the rain dripping from her coat. She froze, staring at him, her mind spinning. Her pulse roared in her ears. The bar felt too small, too loud, too unreal. This stranger's gaze didn't waver. He wasn't joking. He wasn't drunk. He meant every word. Hailey's throat tightened. "You're out of your mind," she whispered, but her voice shook. Ethan's expression didn't change. "Think about it," he said quietly, sliding the card closer. "I solve your problem. You solve mine." Her breath hitched, a storm of disbelief and fear and, God help her, curiosity crashing inside her chest. Around them, the saxophone from the corner band hit a sour note. The bartender muttered under his breath. And somewhere outside, a car horn wailed through the rain. Hailey looked down at the card, back up at his unwavering stare. The floor felt like it tilted under her boots. Her life had been falling apart for months. And now, this? Her hand hovered over the card, trembling, while her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. One offer, one sentence, and nothing would ever be the same. Hailey's eyes snapped open to the blinding morning light pouring through thin hotel curtains. Her head throbbed, her throat burned from too much whiskey, and the faint scent of rain still clung to her coat tossed across the chair. For a second, she didn't remember. Then she saw it, An envelope on the nightstand, its flap open, and inside, a contract with her signature scrawled across the bottom in shaky ink. Her breath caught. Last night's words came rushing back, hitting her like a freight train. "I'll pay, but you'll give me a child." Her pulse spiked. She swung her legs off the bed, bare feet hitting the cold carpet, and snatched the papers. Her own handwriting stared back at her. A date, a signature. Ethan Carter's name in bold print. Her hands trembled. Oh God, what did I just agree to? Before she could second-guess herself, the hotel phone rang, sharp and sudden. She flinched, then grabbed it. "Be ready in 20 minutes, a calm male voice said. "Ethan." The line went dead before she could reply. Her stomach twisted. She splashed cold water on her face in the bathroom sink, tied her damp hair back, and shoved her few belongings into an old black suitcase with a broken zipper. Her hands moved fast, almost on autopilot. Don't think. Just move. Outside, a black SUV idled at the curb. Rain still drizzled, the city waking up in gray. A driver in a dark coat opened the door without a word. Hailey climbed in, clutching the suitcase like it might anchor her to reality. The ride blurred past neon signs and honking cabs until they stopped in front of a sleek glass building downtown. Ethan was waiting in the lobby, already in a charcoal suit, a phone in one hand and a folder in the other. His expression was unreadable, his eyes locking on her like she was a transaction, not a person. "Let's go," he said, holding the door open to a private elevator. No small talk, no hesitation. Upstairs, a law office hummed with quiet efficiency. Papers slid across a polished table. A lawyer explained terms in a clipped voice. Hailey barely heard. Her hand hovered over the pen, then pressed down hard. Her signature etched itself again, darker this time, final. The lawyer handed her a thick envelope. Hailey's fingers felt the weight. Stacks of cash. Her father's nightmare paid off in an instant. Relief and dread tangled in her chest. Ethan closed the folder with a soft click. "We're done here." The next hours hit like a montage. Hailey hauling her old suitcase up the steps of a black town car, the city racing past in streaks of silver and gray. Her reflection in the window, pale, determined, terrified. Then the car slowed in front of a towering building in Midtown Manhattan. A doorman stepped aside as the elevator swept them up to the top floors. When the doors opened, Hailey stepped into another world. The penthouse was huge, polished, silent. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. A wall of glass revealed the skyline, but everything inside felt empty. No photos, no warmth. A living room arranged like a showroom. Leather couch, glass table. Not a single misplaced cushion. Even the air smelled cold, like steel and expensive cologne. Ethan followed her inside, hands in his pockets. "You'll stay here," he said simply, his voice low, even. No noise, no mess. Hailey dropped her suitcase onto the spotless floor with a thud that echoed. Her jaw tightened, her eyes scanning the space like she'd just walked into a museum where she didn't belong. Then slowly, a crooked smile tugged at her lips. "No noise, huh?" she murmured, stepping further in, eyes still locked on his. "We'll see." Ethan's brow lifted slightly at her defiance, but he said nothing. He turned and disappeared down a hallway, leaving her standing in the middle of that frozen palace with a racing heart and a decision burning in her mind. If I'm going to survive this, I'm not just going to exist. I'm going to shake every wall in this place. And in that moment, still dripping rain onto a flawless marble floor, Hailey Brooks knew this deal was only the beginning. Morning sunlight poured into the penthouse, but the air stayed just as cold as the night before. Hailey stood barefoot in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, moving fast. She chopped garlic, tossed butter into a pan, and cranked the volume on a little speaker she found in her bag. A pop song exploded through the room, bold and unapologetic, bouncing off those polished marble walls like a rebellion. Ethan Carter's footsteps clicked against the floor as he appeared from his office, brows drawn tight. His voice sliced through the music. "Turn that down." Hailey didn't even glance at him. "Nope, busy." She dropped pasta into boiling water, the steam rising between them like a barrier. "You're making a mess," he said sharply, his eyes flicking to the specks of butter sizzling on the counter. She stirred the pan with a wooden spoon, her smirk audible in her tone. "You said no noise, no mess? Guess we're breaking all your rules today." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't leave. He watched her with arms crossed, irritation burning behind those steel blue eyes. Then she turned suddenly, a spoonful of creamy pasta steaming in her hand. She stepped right into his personal space, holding it out like a dare. "Taste it." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "I don't taste it." Her voice left no room for argument. For the first time since she moved in, he hesitated. The music throbbed in the background. His hand closed around hers for the briefest second as he took the spoon, and something electric flickered between them, quick, unexpected. He took a bite, chewing slowly, expression unreadable. Hailey tilted her head, watching him with a sly grin. "Well?" He swallowed, still stone-faced. "Not bad." "Not bad?" She laughed, bright and sharp, shaking her head. "You're impossible." Ethan turned away, but his fingers flexed slightly, as if trying to shake off something he didn't want to feel. That afternoon, while he worked at his sleek desk, she crept up behind him with a sheet of smiley face stickers. One bright yellow sticker landed on the corner of his laptop screen before he could stop her. He glanced up, stunned. "What are you doing?" Hailey winked, already walking away. "Making your ice palace a little less boring." He peeled the sticker off carefully, staring at it for a second, then slipped it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. He didn't even know why. The next day, she was at it again, singing off-key while slicing vegetables, scattering crumbs on a countertop that had never seen a crumb before. Ethan stalked past, muttering under his breath, but his eyes lingered on her every time. It wasn't just noise anymore. It was laughter ringing against walls that had been silent for years. It was the smell of garlic and butter in a place that had never smelled like home. It was the way she moved, alive and unafraid, as if daring him to feel something again. And somewhere deep in his chest, something small and dangerous began to crack. Hailey wiped her hands on a towel and caught him watching. "Careful, Carter," she said with a grin, stepping closer than necessary. "You keep standing there like that. People might think you enjoy my cooking." Ethan's lips twitched, just slightly, almost a smile, before he turned back to his desk. But she saw it. She saw it, and it lit a spark in her eyes. He retreated to his office, closing the door behind him. But his heartbeat was uneven. He slipped the yellow sticker from his pocket and turned it between his fingers, staring at it like it held some secret. Hailey stood in the kitchen, humming as she stirred the sauce, unaware that behind that closed door, Ethan Carter, the man who had built walls higher than this Manhattan skyline, was standing there, with a tiny smiley face in his hand, wondering when exactly his rules had started to crumble. And for the first time, the ice didn't feel so unbreakable. The rain hadn't stopped. It was past midnight when Hailey appeared in the doorway of Ethan's office, hair a little messy, hoodie hanging off one shoulder, eyes bright with restless energy. "Get up," she said, leaning against the doorframe. Ethan didn't even look up from his laptop. "It's midnight." And she crossed the room in 3 quick steps, snapped the laptop shut, and planted her hands on her hips. "I want a burger. Drive me." He stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. "Order delivery." "No," she said, dragging out the word like a challenge. "I want to feel the rain, smell the city, see the grease drip down my fingers while the whole world's asleep. Let's go, Carter." Before he could object again, she grabbed his wrist and tugged. That simple touch, warm, insistent, made something shift inside him. He stood, reluctant, muttering under his breath as he reached for his keys. "This is ridiculous." "And yet," she shot back with a grin, "you're grabbing your coat." They rode the elevator in silence. Outside, the streets shimmered under streetlights, slick with rain. Ethan opened the passenger door for her without thinking, then circled to the driver's side. The car pulled out, wipers squeaking as they cut through the wet night. Hailey pressed her face to the window, watching neon signs blur by. "You always this fun at midnight?" she teased. "I'm not fun," he replied, eyes on the road. She laughed softly, a sound that filled the car, warm against the steady patter of rain. Minutes later, they rolled into a small, 24-hour diner glowing like a beacon on an empty block. Hailey jumped out before the car stopped completely, sprinting through the drizzle to the takeout window. Ethan followed slower, hands in his pockets, watching her animatedly order, point at the menu, and laugh with the cashier like they were old friends. Back in the car, she tore open the bag, the scent of charbroiled beef flooding the space. Grease glistened on her fingers as she took a huge bite. She closed her eyes, pure bliss on her face. "Oh my God, this is heaven." Ethan glanced at her, intending to roll his eyes. But instead, he froze. In the glow of the dashboard lights, with rainwater still clinging to her lashes, she looked alive, unapologetic, free. A grin spread across her face, wide and unguarded, and for the first time, something inside him cracked. He didn't even realize he was smiling, until she caught him. "Oh my God," she gasped, pointing at him with a fry. Did Ethan Carter just smile? He turned quickly back to the road, jaw tightening, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him. "Shut up," he muttered, but there was no edge in his voice. The drive back was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Hailey hummed softly, licking salt from her fingers. Ethan kept sneaking glances when he thought she wouldn't notice, each one stirring something new and dangerous in his chest. Back at the penthouse, Hailey kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the couch, burger bag tossed aside. Within minutes, her breathing slowed, soft and even, her face turned toward the city lights. Ethan stood there in the doorway, watching her. The room was quiet, except for the rain against the windows. He noticed her shoulder bare, where the blanket had slipped. For a long moment, he didn't move, caught in some internal war. Then, almost without thinking, he stepped forward. He picked up the blanket, careful not to wake her, and draped it back over her shoulders. His hand hovered for a second, wanting to linger in the warmth she radiated, but he pulled back quickly. He stood there longer than he meant to, watching her sleep, a strange ache settling in his chest. The man who once lived by rules and contracts was standing in his own living room at 2 a.m, shaken by the sight of a woman asleep on his couch, burger wrapper on the table, music still faintly playing from the kitchen. Ethan exhaled slowly, almost afraid to disturb the moment. Then he whispered, so softly even he barely heard it, "Good night, Hailey." And in that stillness, with the city humming beyond the glass, the ice around his heart thinned just a little more. The penthouse was quiet that night, too quiet. Rain tapped against the windows like a nervous heartbeat while Hailey moved through the living room in her socks, carrying a stack of folded laundry. Ethan was still in his office, the glass door cracked just enough for his low voice to slip through. She wasn't trying to listen, she was passing by, but the words froze her mid-step. "After she gives birth, wire her the extra money. She'll leave." Her body went rigid. Hailey gripped the edge of the laundry basket so tightly her knuckles turned white. The rest of his words blurred in her ears. All she could hear was the roar of her own pulse, the sharp hiss of breath as she tried not to gasp. Her throat tightened, her eyes stung. That simple sentence cut deeper than she thought words could. "That's all I am to him?" A contract, a womb with a price tag. She backed away from the door, silent, her legs trembling under her. She stumbled into the hallway, bracing a hand against the wall to steady herself. Her chest ached like someone had punched through her ribs. She bit down on her lips so hard she tasted blood, forcing back the sob rising in her throat. The laundry fell from her arms, forgotten. She pressed her forehead against the cold wall and let herself feel the sting for just a second. The man who had started to smile at her, who draped a blanket over her shoulders at night, who drove her through the rain for a midnight burger, he didn't care. He never cared. Her knees almost buckled, but she straightened, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand. No one would see her break. Not him. Not anyone. The next morning, the city sun poured in, cruel and bright. Hailey moved through the kitchen like a ghost. She cooked in silence. No music, no laughter. Just the scrape of a knife and the sizzle of a pan. She plated the meal perfectly. Steak seared, vegetables lined neatly on the dish, and carried it into the dining room. Ethan looked up from his laptop as she approached. He opened his mouth to say something, but she set the plate down in front of him without a word. No smile, no teasing comment, nothing. Then she turned and walked back to the kitchen, her steps calm, deliberate, cold. The penthouse, once filled with the sound of her humming and the warm scent of garlic and butter, felt hollow again. The air was heavy, the silence suffocating. Ethan stared at the untouched plate, a faint crease forming between his brows. He watched her retreating back, confusion flickering in his eyes. Something was wrong. He could feel it, but he couldn't name it. He didn't know that last night's careless sentence had detonated like a bomb inside her. He didn't know that every smile, every spark, every moment they'd shared now felt like a cruel illusion to her. Hailey stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, trying to catch her breath. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had wanted to scream at him, to throw that contract in his face. But instead, she swallowed it all, every jagged word, every tear that burned her eyes. For hours, the penthouse stayed that way. Ethan sat at the table, picking at the food, glancing toward the kitchen like he might speak. But he didn't. Hailey stayed silent, cleaning the counter, staring at nothing. Outside, the rain started again, soft at first, then heavier, drumming against the windows like an echo of the storm raging inside her. And for the first time since she'd stepped into this world of marble floors and iron rules, Hailey felt truly alone. Ethan Carter, the man who prided himself on reading every contract and calculating every risk, had no idea that one careless sentence had just undone every fragile step forward they'd taken. And Hailey, standing in that cold kitchen, knew something had shattered, and she wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. Night swallowed the city, leaving the penthouse wrapped in shadows. Hailey sat on the edge of her bed, knees pulled tight to her chest, her face buried against a pillow as though it could muffle the storm inside her. The lights in her room were still on, soft, golden, but they only made the tears on her cheeks glisten more clearly. Her breath came in shallow bursts, uneven, breaking in the middle like her heart had cracked. She whispered into the fabric, voice trembling so faintly it was almost a prayer, almost a confession. "I thought you cared." The words hung in the room like smoke. She gripped the pillow tighter, knuckles whitening, trying to squeeze the ache out of her chest. For days, she had been holding it in, pretending she was fine, pretending that nothing Ethan said could touch her. But now, alone, she felt everything. Every laugh they shared felt stolen. Every look felt false. And that sentence she had overheard, "She'll leave," echoed until her mind could not hear anything else. In the hallway outside, Ethan walked past her door, his steps slow, restless. He noticed the light spilling out from the crack at the bottom. It was well past midnight. She should have been asleep. He paused, hand brushing the doorframe, but he didn't knock. Instead, he stood there, fists curling tight at his sides, jaw tense. He stared at the door, as if he could see through it, as if he could will her to open it and say something, anything. Inside, Hailey lifted her head slightly, wiping at her cheeks with shaking hands. She stared at the floor, eyes red, lips pressed together to keep the sob from breaking free. The silence was loud enough to hurt. Her mind replayed every moment she'd started to believe he was different. When he drove her through the rain for a burger, when he gently covered her with a blanket as she slept. She had let herself hope, and now that hope felt like a cruel joke. Ethan shifted his weight outside the door. He raised his hand to knock, but stopped, frozen by a sudden wave of doubt. What would he even say? That sentence didn't mean what you think it did. He didn't even understand what she thought it meant. But he could feel it. Something between them had changed. His hand dropped. He clenched his fist again, frustration tightening his chest. He was used to fixing problems with money, with contracts, with strategies. But this sharp, invisible distance, was something he couldn't calculate. Hailey's quiet sob broke through the thin air in her room. She pressed her palm to her mouth to smother the sound, but it escaped anyway. She curled tighter, rocking slightly, as if that motion could soothe her. Her heart felt raw, scraped down to something too fragile to touch. Ethan turned his head, his breath catching at the faint sound. His throat worked, but no words came. His eyes narrowed, not in anger but in pain he didn't know how to name. He took one step toward the door, then stopped. He stayed there, frozen, fighting with himself. Inside, Hailey whispered again, softer this time, almost broken. "Why did I believe you?" Her voice trembled, and the pillow grew damp under her cheek. She hated herself for caring, hated that she had let him in even an inch. And yet, beneath the anger and heartbreak, something deeper ached, a longing for him to walk through that door, to tell her she was wrong, that she wasn't just a transaction. But the door stayed closed. Ethan turned away finally, his shoulders stiff, fists still tight as he walked down the hall. His reflection caught in the dark window at the end. Tall, composed, but his eyes betrayed him. He hated silence, yet he had created this one. Back in her room, Hailey buried her face in her pillow and let the tears fall freely now. The penthouse was silent, except for the steady drip of rain outside and the faint sound of a woman's quiet heartbreak behind a closed door. And for the first time, they both felt it, sharp, undeniable. The distance between them wasn't just space. It was pain. It was misunderstanding. It was everything they hadn't said. The tension hung in the air like a storm about to break, leaving viewers holding their breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to take the first step through that silence. The hours of silence became unbearable. Ethan paced the length of the penthouse like a man losing control, every step sharp against the marble floor. He couldn't focus on his emails, couldn't drown himself in contracts or numbers. Every time he passed her closed bedroom door, he felt that tightness in his chest grow until it was almost painful. Her light was still on. Her shadow moved faintly behind the curtain. Finally, he stopped in the middle of the hallway, fists clenched at his sides. Enough. He crossed the space in 3 quick strides and pushed her door open without knocking. Hailey shot upright on the bed, startled, her eyes swollen from crying. Her breath caught as she saw him standing there, his face tense, his jaw set. "Talk to me." His voice cracked through the air, louder than he intended, raw with frustration. Her hands clenched into the blanket. Anger flared hot through her grief. "Why?" she snapped, her voice breaking. "So you can explain how I'm just a contract to you? That's all I am, right?" Ethan froze, the words hitting him like a punch. He stepped closer. "Hailey, I heard you," she shouted, standing now, her hands shaking. "You think I don't know what you said? After she gives birth, she'll leave. That's what I am to you." Her voice cracked on the last word, tears spilling again. But this time she didn't hide them. Ethan's breath hitched. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders, his fingers curling into the fabric of her sweater. His own voice shook, low but fierce. "Yes, I said it. I said it because I didn't know how to feel. But I was wrong." She jerked back, shaking her head, her tears falling faster. "Don't lie to me, Ethan. I'm not lying." He cut in, the desperation breaking through his calm facade for the first time. His eyes burned with something she had never seen before: fear, vulnerability. "I don't want the deal anymore. I want you." Hailey stared at him, stunned, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. "You don't mean that." "I do," he said, and the tremor in his voice made her chest tighten. "Not because of the baby, because of you." Her hands trembled. Her anger flared again, tangled with hope, tangled with hurt. She slammed a fist against his chest, hard enough that he staggered back half a step. "Then why would you say those things?" she cried, her voice breaking completely. Ethan didn't let go. He caught her wrists as they hit him again, pulling her closer, his arms closing around her like a shield. "Because I'm an idiot," he whispered, his voice shaking, raw, his forehead pressing against hers. "Because I didn't know how to let someone in until you walked into my life." Hailey's sob caught in her throat, aught in. She tried to push him away again, but his arms tightened, holding her like he'd never let go. "Stop lying to me," she whispered, the words weak, almost pleading. "I'm not," Ethan breathed, and now his own eyes glistened, his voice unsteady. "Not because of the baby. Because of you, Hailey. You." Her knees gave out, and he went down with her, both of them sinking to the floor in the middle of that perfect cold room that had never felt less cold. She buried her face in his chest, hitting him once more with her fist, but softer this time, as if testing him. He didn't flinch. He only held her tighter, his hand sliding into her hair, his heartbeat racing against her cheek. Her sobs shook both of them now, but she didn't pull away. And Ethan, the man who once believed nothing could reach him, let his own tears fall silently into her hair. The viewers feel it, every crack in his voice, every tremor in her hands, every wall between them collapsing in that single moment. It wasn't about contracts anymore. It wasn't about debts or deals. It was two broken people clinging to each other in the dark, admitting what they should have said all along. And for the first time, the ice truly shattered. The hospital lights were blinding, cold and relentless against the storm of panic ripping through Hailey's body. Her breaths came in short, sharp gasps, each contraction hitting like a wave strong enough to break her in half. Sweat dampened her hairline, her knuckles white as she clutched the rail of the hospital bed. "Ethan!" Her voice cracked, raw with pain and terror. "Don't you dare leave me!" He was already there, leaning over her, his hand gripping hers so tight it almost hurt. "I'm here," he said, his own voice low and steady, but trembling at the edges. "I'm not going anywhere. Always, Hailey, always." Her nails dug into his palm with the next contraction, and he didn't even flinch. His other hand moved fast, brushing damp strands of hair from her face, swiping sweat from her brow. He bent close, speaking in short bursts, his tone urgent but tender. "Breathe, just breathe with me. You're stronger than you think. I've got you." She shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "It hurts so bad, Ethan. I can't—" "Yes, you can," he cut in, his grip tightening. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "You've survived worse. You've survived me. You can do this." The monitors beeped steadily in the background, nurses moving quickly, calling out instructions. The room spun in a blur of white coats and soft commands, but Hailey could only see him, Ethan, leaning close, holding her hand like a lifeline. His own jaw tight, as if her pain was his own. Time seemed to stretch, each push pulling a scream from her throat, each second feeling like an eternity. Ethan stayed, anchoring her with his presence, murmuring encouragement between each wave of agony. His thumb brushed circles on her skin, his voice a constant in the chaos. "You're doing amazing. Almost there." "I'm right here." Then came the final push. Hailey clenched her eyes shut, gripping his hand with every ounce of strength left in her. Her cry rose above the hum of machines, raw and desperate. And then, cutting through the tension, came another sound, a baby's cry. High, sharp, alive. Hailey's chest heaved as her body went limp against the bed, tears flooding her eyes. Her ears caught the nurse's words. "It's a girl." Ethan froze, every muscle in his body locking as the nurse turned and placed the tiny bundle in his arms. He stared down at her, stunned. A little face peeked out from the blanket, red and scrunched, a tuft of dark hair damp against her forehead. "She's—" His voice broke, thick with emotion he didn't even know how to hold back. He blinked hard, his throat tightening. "She's perfect, like you." Hailey let out a soft, shaky laugh through her tears. "Let me see her, please." Ethan moved quickly, gently, lowering the baby into Hailey's arms. Hailey gasped as she felt the tiny weight settle against her chest. The little girl's fist curled instinctively around Hailey's finger. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, one hand still wrapped around Hailey's, the other hovering protectively over the baby's blanket as if he could shield them both from the world. He leaned close, their heads touching as they looked down together. The storm outside the window had passed, leaving the city lights shimmering in the night. Inside the room, the harsh hospital light softened, catching the tears on Ethan's cheeks, the exhausted glow on Hailey's face. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The baby's tiny cries faded into soft breaths, the only sound in the room, the steady beeping of the monitor, and the rhythm of 3 heartbeats slowly aligning. Ethan's voice came low, almost reverent. "You did it, Hailey. You did this." Hailey looked up at him, eyes wet, voice whisper thin, but certain. "We did this." He bent down and pressed his forehead gently to hers, his hand now resting over both hers and the baby's. The man who once spoke in contracts and conditions couldn't find words for what filled his chest now: love, awe, something unshakably real. In that hospital room, with the city humming beyond the glass, the three of them stayed there wrapped in a quiet that felt nothing like emptiness. It felt whole. It felt like home. Weeks turned into months, and the penthouse that once felt like a museum now pulsed with life. Toys were scattered across the hardwood floors. Bright blocks, a tiny rattle, a blanket patterned with little stars. The air no longer smelled sterile and cold. It carried the sweet scent of Hailey's fresh baked cinnamon rolls drifting from the kitchen. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, catching the soft laughter that filled every corner. Ethan Carter, once the man who lived by strict schedules and flawless suits, was standing in the living room wearing a simple gray sweater, sleeves pushed up. He crouched over a changing table, frowning in concentration as he struggled with a diaper. "Why is this thing so complicated?" he muttered, tugging at the tabs. Hailey leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, amusement sparkling in her eyes. "Not bad, Mr. Ice King," she teased, her laughter soft, but full of pride. He glanced up, caught off guard, and for a second, that old stern expression threatened to return. But instead, he chuckled. A warm, unguarded sound that made Hailey's heart squeeze. "Don't get used to it," he said, but the corners of his mouth betrayed him. Lily, nestled in her crib, cooed as if joining in the joke. Ethan finally secured the diaper, then lifted the baby into his arms with surprising gentleness. He walked over, placing Lily carefully into Hailey's embrace, and watched as the little girl's fingers curled around Hailey's necklace. That evening, after Lily had drifted off to sleep, the kitchen glowed under the soft pendant lights. Hailey stood barefoot at the counter, humming as she cleaned up, when Ethan entered quietly behind her. She turned, a smile ready on her lips, only to stop short. Ethan was down on one knee. A small, velvet box sat open in his trembling hand, a simple diamond catching the warm light. His voice, steady, yet layered with something raw and real, filled the quiet kitchen. "Stay with me," he said, his gaze locked on hers, vulnerable in a way he had never been before. "For real. No contracts, no conditions, just us." Hailey's hand flew to her mouth, eyes welling up with tears that blurred the edges of the room. She laughed through the sob that escaped her, shaking her head in disbelief. "Ethan Carter," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're unbelievable." He swallowed hard, waiting, every muscle tense. "Yes," she breathed out, the word trembling with joy. Then she wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand and added with a teasing grin, "But you're cooking dinner tonight." Ethan let out a laugh, pure, unrestrained, and slipped the ring onto her finger. He stood, pulling her into his arms, holding her as though he'd never let go again. Lily stirred in her crib, letting out a soft giggle that echoed through the room, and the two of them turned to look. Hailey's head rested against Ethan's chest, his arms wrapped firmly around her, and for a moment, time felt suspended. The penthouse was no longer cold. The marble floors didn't feel empty. The walls that once held nothing but silence now carried laughter, baby giggles, and the sound of two hearts finally beating in rhythm. Under the golden glow of the kitchen lights, Ethan pressed a kiss to Hailey's forehead. She looked up at him, her smile breaking through her tears, and in that instant, they both knew. Every fight, every misunderstanding, every tear had led them here. No more contracts, no more walls. Only love. As the camera would pull back for the viewers, they would see the soft chaos of a home transformed. Toys scattered like confetti, a faint trail of flour on the counter, and a tiny crib in the corner. Ethan and Hailey stood together, holding each other close, while Lily's laughter bubbled into the air like music. And as the night settled gently over the city, the penthouse glowed warm against the skyline, a promise that even the coldest hearts could find their way home. In life, we often build walls around ourselves because of past pain or disappointment. Ethan's journey shows us that no matter how cold or guarded we become, the right person and the right moment can break through. Hailey reminds us that even when you feel like you're just a part of someone's plan, you still have the power to choose your worth and fight for genuine love. Their story proves that healing often comes from unexpected places, sometimes through messy, late-night conversations, sometimes through acts of care so simple they almost go unnoticed, like sharing a meal or holding someone's hand through fear. For all of us, especially in our busy American lives, this is a reminder. Relationships are not transactions. They are built on patience, forgiveness, and the courage to speak our truth. Don't let pride or fear silence you. Love grows when we are willing to be vulnerable and real. What part of their journey spoke to you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And if you felt inspired, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us what really matters.